Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Friday, August 22nd. Derek Van Riper, Enoceris here with you. On this episode, we take a look at a few mailbag questions and get ready for weekend waiver pickups. We're actually recording this on Thursday afternoon.
I know you said it's Friday, but is it though?
I'm lying. I'm lying to preserve my own sanity.
You have had a crazy week this week in the Van Riper household.
I just want calm and rest, and it's still going to be a couple of weeks away. So people who've listened for a long time know we have a lovely golden doodle, Hazel. She's 8 years old. Hazel had to have some surgery to get some bumps removed this week, which is great because it went well. It should help her quality of life long term, should hopefully keep her with us for a long time. The thing you might know about Hazel as a golden doodle is she's very active. So to keep an active dog calm and just laying around all day is actually more difficult than you'd think, especially when she's wearing a giant cone and does not like that giant cone.
She's just banging the cone into things and walking around.
She wants to get up and down off of furniture, and we got to keep all that stuff covered. It's just, it's a first world problem through and through. But when you layer that on top of toddler life and then trying to simultaneously work, so we're putting the Friday episode together on Thursday because I have lots of wonderful help here taking care of things while we record. So
I'm off to the Sabre seminar again. If you have the chance, check it out. There's still tickets available, and on the Discord, I've listed the hangout spots for Friday and Saturday night in Chicago. One more north side, one more south side. Hopefully that works out for our listeners, and I will be having probably a little more fun than Derek.
Each day I think is going to get a little easier for me, but yeah, I'm panicking because I have fantasy football drafts coming up the next couple of weeks. I'm like, that's a couple hours where I'm going to have to do something, and it's going to be I'm just going to have to walk away. I'm going to have to go on auto draft sometimes. So be very aggressive.
One of the reasons I don't think I've won Autonew is that I never make room for Autonew drafts for some reason. It's just that they always come at a time when I've made room. Babe, I need one for the main event. I used to fly to Arizona to do AL labor, so at some point I was like, I'm not going to ask about this one. I'm going to make dinner. So I'll be making dinner while doing the Autonew draft, and that doesn't lead to the best outcomes. So
yeah, for my home fantasy football league, I feel like I can do that at 50% attention as long as I think about what I want to do.
Preparation is the key.
As long as I just think about it, it's an auction, so I can just fire in some big bids, hopefully get a few foundational guys, and then it's a small enough league. I'm going to play the wire anyway.
Then you're just paying attention. If you have lists of who to watch out for, you're just waiting for the right name to pop up, and if the wrong name pops up, you're like, oh, time to chop the onions, And
if the wrong, if I get someone I don't like, as long as I'm taking care of the other stuff, life will be okay. But yes, that familiar feeling of I have burned all of my favors. I need to just keep my head down and just get it done. Keep things moving along. It's been a chaotic week. So thank you for picking up the extra slack on Wednesday, running the show with Jed. That is much appreciated. Let's open up that mailbag, though. A few questions been rolling in.
I got some feedbacks from our friend John Fernandez, who said that I'm doing great, and that was my best hosting episode yet, I think.
That's awesome. I'm glad to get that feedback. Glad to hear that, man.
It still didn't sound that natural, I don't think.
Well, improving. I've been so busy I haven't had a chance to listen to the Wednesday episode on Thursday afternoon of the show I work on. That's how it's been going. Improvement is all that matters in the grand scheme of things, especially when you do it when I'm not around. I'm usually around.
Right,
so,
that's true.
Hopefully,
just need to be good enough backup.
Onward and upward as far as things go in
playing
the
out of position.
Yeah, I mean, if you can play second and third, you're better at third, but you can at least play second if needed. That's still valuable. That's still good. And if you keep getting better at second base, that's good. That's heading in the right direction. A lot of mailbag questions though coming in, so we want to catch up on those on this Friday. Michael C. writes, would love to hear the guys break down how Gavin Williams is succeeding, at least at run prevention. Second time in 3 years, he's beating FIP and xERA by about a run. Of course, the walk rate is awful and the whip is bad. He's about a K per inning pitched in his career, so there's still limited fantasy utility. Good velo, great extension, but his fastball isn't a wonder pitch. In fact, it gets hit harder than the average right-handed four-seamer. His curve and sweeper are good, not great. In prior years, he had plus, location plus. Now it's a 93. Is he just getting lucky again in this stretch where he's pitched very well. I had very good results for the better part of almost 3 months now.
Yeah, like yes and no. And what I'll say is this. I think one of the hardest things about this, and we talked about this a little bit this week, and I talked about it a little bit on the craft with Nick, is that players are changing as we're trying to figure out their true talent, right? And so I will say that Gavin Williams has been lucky this year. Yes. If you look at the full year and you look at the full year results, yes. But the current version of Gavin Williams, I don't think is getting that lucky. Here's my argument for it. So before he had no cutter, and he had the 86 location plus, and that was all the way into May. So that's dragging down his full year location plus. And that's when he was throwing a fastball with no command, breaking balls with not great command, and he was all stuff, nothing else. And he was slightly lucky. He had a 3.94 ERA and a 4.26 WHIP. The part where he was really lucky was he introduces a new cutter, and he loves the new cutter, and he throws it almost a third of the time, 27% of the time, and he's got a 100 stuff, 96 location because he can command the cutter better than he can command his four-seamer. It reduces his stuff. It improves his location. He's a slightly better pitcher. He has a 5.07 FIP, but he has a 3.25 ERA. That period, I think he was lucky. Now, this period, he's being lucky again by ERA versus FIP, but this is the best version of him. What he's done since July 20th is he's reduced the cutter usage. And so what I think has happened is when he was throwing the cutter nearly 30% of the time, whenever he needed a cutter, whenever he needed a strike, he went to the cutter. And I think that you become pretty easy to keyhole. People say, oh, when he needs a strike, he goes to the cutter. I'm going to sit cutter in 2-0 counts and stuff like that. When you're throwing the cutter 16% of the time, it could be cutter, it could be slider, it could be four seam in counts where the batter has leverage. And he's gotten more comfortable with the cutter. He's put the four-seamer in better locations since this, and he's been the best pitcher version of himself. Now, he's put up a 2 ERA against a 350 FIP, but that 350 FIP is good. That's pretty good. And that's sort of where I think his true talent is right now. And I think that, there's basically 3 different versions of Gavin Williams over the course of this year. The one that's going right now, I think is a sort of a high 3s ERA guy with a good strikeout rate and the best command of his career.
Yeah, there's stuff to like here. Maybe it's just finding the right balance with that pitch that he loves. Like, you throw it too much, like you said, you keyhole, it causes different problems for you. You get to that right level, and everything can fall into place. It's not just the cutter itself; it's how the cutter interacts with the rest of the arsenal. That's why it's our favorite adjustment on this show for guys that can add one, because it changes a lot about contact quality, I think, too. And I looked at the recent schedule. I think that span you cut it off was like July 20th. So it's basically the last 30 days. He's a top 20 pitcher in the player rater during that span. That's not a surprise. He had the A's at home, the Royals on the road, the Twins at home, the Mets away, the Marlins at home, and the D-backs away. I mean, it's not a great brutal schedule, but I don't think that would count as like the softest possible schedule either. These have some quality offenses mixed in. Didn't do it all at home. It's a hotter part of the calendar. Like maybe it's a slightly below average strength of schedule during that span, but not embarrassingly bad.
Yeah, and I think when you look at full year numbers, you get a full year picture, and that's valuable. And I'm not saying that he hasn't been lucky this year, like I said, but when you look at a recent picture, you get a better idea of like who he is right now. And I didn't even look at Oopsie, but I'm leaning up right with Oopsie. One thing that does reduce his value is that he doesn't seem to be a great whip pitcher, and that's because he doesn't have great natural command. But he does have 50 future command from Fangraphs, which is slightly above average command. And I think he's achieving that not through improving his command or getting better or improving his mechanics, but by finding the right pitch mix for his command. So Oopsie, 3.74 ERA, 128 whip projection, more than a strikeout per inning. I think that's who he is.
Yeah. All right. So it's not the future ace that some of us were hoping for. Like, I thought, and this is something we've learned this year especially, that the old minor league K rates can largely port over part of my brain is slowly giving up, because it's just not The competition's different. It just doesn't quite work.
Oh my God, look at those minor league K rates. They're so beautiful.
I thought when you started in the 33 to 37 range that you live in the 28 to 30 range in the big leagues, and even that I don't think is guaranteed anymore.
For his career.
It's just not the same. So that is a lesson to learn, I think, from Gavin Williams. And even if he's a high to mid 3s ERA, 120s whip guy, strikeout rating, that's a good outcome. That is a good major league pitcher. It's just not the highest end outcome that you might have hoped for. Thanks a lot for that question from Michael C.
He could actually be, in a weird way, like slightly low to me, kind of, if you're thinking about keeper leagues and stuff. Like if you go try to shop Gavin Williams right now in a keeper league, I don't think people are, I think they'll think they see you coming. Like, yeah. Oh yeah, you're going to shop. Yeah, you want to give me Gavin Williams. He's one of the luckiest pitchers in baseball this year.
You want to give me Gavin Williams on a heater? Yeah, I think the typical person looking at the player page will see an ERA that's more than a run below the Sierra, the K rate not being that great, and say, yeah, I'm not overpaying for that. And
I think the sneaky play is to keep him.
Yeah, hold him or get him at a reasonable swap value and just say, he's just fine the way he is. You trust him a lot. The variance might not be that wide. You see the 4.86 from last year and the 1.37 whip. I don't think that's actually in his true talent range of outcomes in the long run. I don't think that's going to happen
injured
again.
Last year. He was talking about there were pitches he couldn't throw because he was injured last year. Like that was part of the reason he was hesitant to bring in the cutter this year.
Exactly. Thanks a lot for that question. We got another one here. Holy Predator number 72. I'm just glad that we haven't met the other 71 Holy Predators in the Discord. 72 is our favorite of the Holy Predators. He wants to know, this might be for next year's preseason, but I think this is fine. This question's pretty good. Holy Predator writes, I will confess I was always a sucker for Billy Hamilton. It never really worked out because you can't steal first. Chandler Simpson seems to have figured out a way to actually steal first. I have him for $5 right now, $9 for 2026. When he came up, I activated immediately, settled in. I needed to restructure my roster. Generally agree. It's better to have a roster of 20 homer and 15 steal guys. Someone has to build around Simpson, and at $9, I think he's a bargain. I'd like to hear you guys discuss how to best build a team around him. I mean, I do think the question makes a fair point. Like, you have players like this that have oddly shaped production. They are definitely good enough to be rostered because they generate enough value to be used in a lot of leagues. And when you choose to build a team with them, it forces you to find a few other players that compensate for their deficiencies when you're talking about a roto league. So, I mean, $9 for like an AL only league, I'd be okay, happy to keep Chandler Simpson there. In a mixed league, I think I would just throw him back. I don't think someone's going to spend more than that to see what he brings to the table in 2026. I mean, we've got a 9.8% K rate, an average that keeps flirting with 300. He's 36 for 46 as a base stealer in 78 games. He hits the ball on the ground a lot, and he's got a 0% barrel rate with a 16.2% hard hit rate. So even though he's putting a ton of balls in play, he's not hitting the ball very hard. He's probably never going to hit the ball very hard. It is a put it in play, put pressure on the defense sort of profile. And I think one key difference, at least Simpson today versus Billy Hamilton for a lot of his career, Billy Hamilton's glove locked in a lot of playing time and a lot of opportunities for him. Chandler Simpson is still a work in progress defensively, despite the impressive raw tools. So as you think about a player who creates so much value on the speed side and average, but so little value in the power categories, what's in your thought process for how to build around that?
Very carefully. The weirdest thing that I would say is that I think that you should almost just, keep him. Like you can keep him, but you should almost build as if you don't have him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, It does. It makes a lot of sense. Like you still want to just draft a team that does everything well, because in a roto league, if you're relying on, let's say, half, we're talking about an AL only league potentially, half of your stolen bases from one player and he gets hurt, you just tank that category because one guy got hurt.
I mean, by fielding run value, he's the 97th best center fielder out of 99. So, I do think there are some positive differences between him and Billy Hamilton. Like he strikes out half as much as Billy Hamilton did. And as much as that hard hit rate sounds terrible, it's actually better than Billy Hamilton's. And the bat speed is a little bit better. So as a batter, I think he's a little bit better of a batter than Billy Hamilton. And you've got these projections that, get close to 91 WRC plus. He's at 92 WRC plus. Once you add the base running value, that's an above replacement player, even with his poor defense. And if he can just take a little bit of a step forward on defense, then you've got at least a league average player, and you're likely to play him. But if I kept him, and I don't think it's a 100% yes, but yes, in an AL only, I think I'd be tempted. I would try to build, like, let's say you realize that last year the second place in steals had 150 steals, right? And you look at the bottom and you're like, I can get off the bottom with, 75 steals, right? Or 100 steals, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I would try to draft a team that would get off the bottom. So so what I would say is, like, I'm going to draft a team that's just good at everything, and we're just slightly bad at steals. I'm not going to do a full punt steals. I'm still going to try and gather, 70, 80, whatever it is, 100 steals with little 10s and 5s. And, I'm going to draft those kind of players. And then if you put Simpson on top of that and he's playing, I win steals.
Right.
And
so you want to get a mid-pack steals. You're not going to build a team like that would win steals without Simpson because you have him. But You're not going to fully because of the variation in his profile. You're not expecting the full projection to hit. You're not.
Yeah, and especially if you have trades, what you build yourself up to do is, like, you have three outcomes, right? You have the Simpson doesn't really play all year, and I end up with 3 points in stolen bases, and hopefully I built enough of a good team elsewhere, right? You have the second one, which is sort of what happened this year. Simpson is up and down, and he gives me 40 steals, and I end up second or first in steals anyway, because I built a team that already had some steals, and I get 40 steals from this guy. And that's good. The third is he plays all year, and then I can trade him in August because I'm so far out in steals, So I think, with the worst case scenario, you're still in it. And the other two scenarios, you're profiting. So you're sort of in the 2 out of 3 scenarios I profit.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. There are other players like this. I would say Xavier Edwards is somewhat similar in the profile. Very little power, light RBI count. You're going to get average in runs and steals. 3 categories are good, but he plays middle infield.
Yeah, he plays second base.
Yep. So there's a little bit of difference there. I mean, Nico Horner's kind of like that. I would say
better defense
and more balance in the RBI category. It's not just the lack of homers. It's like driving runs in either, because there's very little extra base stuff in there.
So not much you're going to do. The guy has to be in scoring position already,
Yeah, and that just doesn't work particularly well. So that's the other part of it too, is don't lose sight of how that impacts you in the RBI category, because that is the other flat tire that comes with so little power. But definitely a good problem to think about before the trade deadline in your league, or at least going into the winter when you're thinking about who to possibly hold on to, who to trade for as potential keepers, regardless of format. For what it's worth, I know we were kind of trying to put that in the AL only box. I think that's an AL only league for Holy Predator. Chandler Simpson so far, this is only with 305 plate appearances, has been a $9 player for 15-team 5x5 leagues.
Oh, hey, so he's
$9.
I mean, and this is the 3 scenarios I described. This is the middle one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty good argument for keeping him, I think.
Yeah, especially if it's a deeper league. If it's AL only, I think he's definitely a keeper at 9. If it's mixed, I think you can tempt fate and just say, maybe I don't have the other right keepers. Maybe I don't want to be pushed into those corners where I have to build the roster that way. But thank you for that question, HP. Couple more mailbag questions to get to. This one's from A. Are we buying Chris Paddack and Charlie Morton both sticking in the Tigers rotation? This is actually a question about Troy Melton. Everybody wants to see Troy Melton start. Will it happen with Never Paddack and Charlie Morton both there?
Not this year, I don't think. We've talked about how Troy Melton, topped out last year at 100 innings. That's the most he's had in his career. And this year he's already at 110. And I think that, you could make the case, well, just let him pitch, and he would get to the end of the season, but he would get to the end of the season with no more innings left. So I think they want him on this roster in the postseason. You may get a spot start like you had last time, but I think that's a little bit dangerous for a young arm to be kind of, oh, you're 2-3 innings at a time. Oh, now you're spot starting. We want you to go 5. So I think this is it. Now, what happens in the postseason is interesting because I think that we don't have a great sense of the Tigers' postseason rotation. You have Skubal for sure. Mize has been kind of regressing the way we were afraid he might. Flaherty's up and down. I think Flaherty, you pitch at home. So you got Skubal and Flaherty for 2 out of the first 3. 3 and games 3 and 4. If you go to a 4-game series, I think it's just Mize, Morton, Paddack, and Melton, and Gibson Long and Alex Cobb.
They'll kitchen sink it a little bit.
And Montero.
I think, injuries will probably be a factor that determines who's available by that point. So 1 or 2 of the guys you listed might not be there. Is there a world in which Melton makes a start for them in the postseason? Maybe.
You kept some innings around, yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard to rely on it. I mean, I think when we talked to Cody Stavenhagen a couple weeks ago about the Tigers, or last week, it's just like, no one knows exactly right now. Maybe the Tigers internally have a good plan that they feel okay about, but it's really hard to discern it from the outside. But 2026, I think we're going to have a lot of Rates and Barrels listeners that have Troy Melton stashed away on their rosters because there's already a good bit of buzz about him on the show and in the Discord. Thanks a lot for that question, A. Perhaps the most wavery question that came into the mailbag in the last couple of days came from Woof. Gents, anyone willing to dip a toe into the problem with Spencer Strider? He's basically a drop, right? Now, this question did not come with a league context, but I will ask you, are there shallow enough leagues in which you would have found someone you like better on the wire than Spencer Strider, given the struggles that he's been going through over the better part of the last 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, his fastball has lost a tick of velo and an inch of ride. His slider is not the same this year, and it drops more, but it's also more than a tick slower. And it's the type of gyro slider that benefits a lot from being thrown hard. He's trying to offset that with a few more curveballs this year. And that's an all right idea, but, curveballs and changeups, but it's just not, it's still largely a 2-pitch mix that is dependent on those 2 pitches being dominant. And you can see it in the stuff, like none of his pitches is above average right now by Stuff Plus. Plus, on top of that, he's got this sort of, the lack of locations that you see from guys coming back. Now, all of the projections are usable. Even the bat one, which is the worst as it is for most pitchers with a 4.20 ERA. They're all usable. And that's why I really struggled in my rankings, because I start with the projections and I basically pushed him as low as I could given his projections. I mean, if you just look at my ranks, the color coding for me in my charts, and if you go on the Google Doc, I think you can see really obviously what I've done, which is I take guys with their projections and I move them around. And oh, look, Spencer Strider is the lowest guy with a really good projection. I mean, he has a 3.41 projection. I have him behind Shota Managa, who has a 4.10 ERA projection. You know, and that's because I think Shota's is maybe a little bit too high, and the maybe model's missing something there. And I think Strider's the ERA is too low, and I think the model's missing something there too. So he's right there with Kodai Senga and some other pitchers. But honestly, looking at this now, and we've had a start since I did my rankings. How much can you keep that projection in mind anymore?
It just doesn't feel like you could trust it because of what we've seen for a while. I mean, I think He has a negative $35 value in the last 30 days. He's a -7 for the season. ERA is over 5. The whip's bad. The strikeouts are nice. That's all you're getting.
BB's okay. 27 is pretty good, actually. I mean, a 17 is pretty good, actually. But it's okay. It's above average. And the Sierra is a 384. So there are some arguments to be made for him. It's like a really bad home run rate that's really killing him right now.
Yeah, I'm only using Strider in the aforementioned Tout Wars all injury risk team. I'm winning ERA anyway, even though I keep using him. It's a 15-team league, but I'm just maxing out starters right now.
Let me throw some would you rathers at you, because I had Strider. Based on that projection, I had him in at 32. That just seems way too high now. All of a sudden, Spencer Strider or Luis Heel at 52.
I think Heel's healthier. I probably would take Heel.
Spencer Strider and Yu Darvish at 56.
Okay, you've already found the line. I think where it's tough for me to just say
Max Scherzer at 56, 59. Emmett Sheehan at 62.
I might take Scherzer for the rest of this season. Scherzer has been pitching well.
Yeah,
I'm still worried about the thumb. Sheehan,
Mitch Keller, 64. Spencer Strider, Mitch Keller.
What's my best case outcome with Sheehan and Keller? Getting a 417, better chance at wins probably with Sheehan. Maybe. I mean, 5, 5, and 6 the last 3 times out. I think I'd keep rolling Strider in that case. I mean, it's not a slam dunk. I'm more at the point in those leagues where ratios have been determined. Gallon? I think I'm taking Gallon. I mean, the Strider, you're getting the Ks.
Strider still got the Ks, yeah.
Gallon's a little lighter there.
All right, I'm personally I think if I'm rejiggering right now, I'm putting Spencer Strider in the low 50s somewhere.
Yeah, and that does put him in a droppable range, though, because there are some leagues, shadow leagues, where guys coming off injury, guys that have underperformed that we might like better are going to be out there, and that probably gets us perfectly into the weekend waiver preview conversation. I mean, Bryce Miller came off the IL this week. If you're in a 10-team league and Bryce Miller's on the wire, based on what you saw in his first start back, do you trust Bryce Miller more the rest of the year, or do you trust Spencer Strider? Because I think that's the type of league where you would cut Strider, and that's the type of league where Miller might actually be available. I think he's rostered in about 70% of CBS leagues right now.
Yeah, I guess I would. I mean, Strider, Miller came back with a 114 stuff, and maybe more importantly, a 108 location plus, which was really what was missing. And I know it doesn't really show in the overall results because he still had 2 walks, but that's a tough Phillies team in Philadelphia. And I think the location plus numbers are good. The command was good. The velo was good. Yeah, I'll take him, especially because, he's going to have some games in Seattle, and it's just a real big equalizer. So I just don't. I want to put out there that like Strider has been usable at times this year, and I think a big part of what's messing up any of the value or what we're thinking about him is 3 starts in a row that have just been disastrous. But
just horrible. He had a 3.71 ERA and a 1.22 WHIP at the end of his start on July 28th. So he's done all of that damage in 3 turns. The Brewers got him a little, the Mets got him worse, and then the White Sox got him to start after that. I wonder if he just hit some kind of wall physically too. If something just hasn't quite felt right in August. But it's also the best
velo days of his career. Not his career, sorry, of his year.
Of his year. I don't know. It's just so weird. If he'd stretch those out a little bit, I don't even know if we'd be having this conversation because they all happen close together, especially. It's kind of what are we doing? How bad is it really kind of question. And it's okay to ask. It's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, totally. I don't think the answer is obvious, but I also don't look at the last 3 games and be like, oh, he lost another tick off his thing, or oh, his location plus is the worst of the year. You're like, oh, he's just toast. He's searching. And it hasn't even been, you can't even say like a couple of good teams got him, like the White Sox got him too. I understand. It's also August in Atlanta it's not quite the launching pad that it used to be, but it's a fairly, friendly place for hitters. maybe he comes out next time. He's been throwing the curve a little bit more the last 2 times. Maybe he kind of relies on the curve a little bit more to even out his mix. I mean, we've seen Dylan Cease do something similar where, like, he had 2 good pitches, but he kept getting hit for homers, And so maybe Strider just finally says, you know what, I got to throw them all 4 of my pitches, even if the other 2 aren't that great.
Yeah. I don't get the sense that Strider has a season like this one, goes into the offseason, is like, everything's good, and just shows up again in 2026. I think there's going to be some real, like, careful consideration into how he wants to attack hitters next year and how he's going to try and get back to being the guy that we saw pre-injury. So I'm really curious. I don't even think we can discuss it yet. It's like, I just want to see where he goes in some of the early drafts before I get a feel for, like, how aggressively I'll take a chance on the rebound. But I get the sense you're going to get a good discount. If people are in August saying, should I drop him? That probably pushes him out to the 150 overall mark to start draft season, and then has massive rocket appeal to if he pitches well and looks good all spring.
Yeah,
then he goes from pick 150 to like pick 50.
Hold. Yeah, you can get him a draft and hold as like your 6th starter or something, your 5th starter, and then then he starts pitching better and he starts going up the rankings. Yeah, that could be all over the place. Do you remember some of the rankings for Jake DeGrom over the years where, it's one way at the beginning of the offseason, and then, right before the season starts, he's like the number 1 pitcher on the board.
And that's usually my sign to get in early when there's a little more uncertainty,
and then get back
and
out
then
again.
Just walk away when you have proof. Like, because if you're just wrong about him at the lower price, life will go on. If you're wrong about him at the inflated price, it is going to sting quite a bit. The other part of the should I drop him that it's tough, though, is I'm looking at the names we have on the rundown for pitchers this week, and there's some interesting guys, right?
But injury has ravaged the pool. We've taken all the prospects that were exciting and taken them up, and there's just it doesn't look great on waiver wires for pitching right now.
But if you're asking yourself, would I rather have Braxton Ashcraft for the rest of the season or Spencer Strider? I just don't. Even if we're going to say nice things about Braxton Ashcraft, I'm not sure I'm on that level. That's, to me, a pretty big sort of leap. Now, the good news is if you're in a weekly league...
Braxton Ashcraft has faced 18 batters once. So,
right.
You think you're getting a win?
He's going to go again Friday night at home against the Rockies. So you'll get one more look, and maybe it'll be 18, 19, 20 batters faced. It's kind of like the Ohtani workload. It's like at that sort of level right now. Hard to get wins, but at least trending in the right direction. And then if you're looking ahead... Next start is at St. Louis next week for Braxton Ashcraft.
Pretty good. I think, I'm trying to pick him up in leagues right now ahead of the Colorado start because I anticipate that one being good. I anticipate the St. Louis one being good. I don't know that he's an every time starter, but I like Pittsburgh starters in general, especially righty. Especially lefties, actually, but Ashcraft is not lefty. I think when I was looking at the park factors, did you know how different the park factors are for lefties and righties in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, generally it's been a weird park for I think most of its lifespan.
But for lefties, it's the 12th hitter friendliest park. But for righties, it is 21st. That can work that can work either way. If you're a dominant righty, then you're just especially dominant against the righties. But generally, I just like pitchers in Pittsburgh. And then Braxton Ashcraft, the story for me on him has been awful injury history, elite curveball. And when he was coming into this year, he was missing an arsenal around it. I don't think the slider's that great. But he added a sinker this year. And even though the sinker is a pitch that he throws, 10 to 20% of the time, depending on the game, I think it's really important because it helps him keep them off of his four seam and it gives him a 4-pitch mix. And at least against lefties and righties, 3 pitches each. It's 4-pitch maybe against righties and 3-pitch against lefties, but you could throw a sinker to lefties too and just use it as a surprise pitch, as a wrinkle pitch, as we've said. So I think it's a good arsenal, good command. In terms of keeper value and thinking about next year, this is a guy who's going to have no matter what he does this year, I think you have to give him a C plus health grade next year.
Yeah, but he might be a good late round C health grade guy to take a chance on because of the park, because of the skills. I held him in Devil's Rejects this year. It was an expansion redraft sort of thing for the team I took over, but he was one of the last guys in, and I feel like there might be enough there by the end of the season to possibly hold him again, which is not ideal for a player you keep in a dynasty league, but there are worse outcomes. He's still on my roster, so.
And if you're worrying about like the strikeout rate, I think the problem is that his elite pitch is a curveball. Curveballs don't get swung at as much, but he commands it well, so he gets called strikes with it. And they produce good outcomes. Look at his ground ball rate, 51%. He doesn't give up homers. And so I know that if you stick too closely to strikeout rate, you won't be that interested in him. But I think, Oopsie bakes that stuff in and gives him a 3.84 ERA with a league average strikeout rate. And maybe that's a deep league thing. Maybe I'm just super excited because I'm in a lot of deep leagues. But I am kind of excited about him.
As far as some other names that are intriguing in shallow leagues, if you're looking at Bryce Miller, there's a chance that Cam Schlittler is still out there. He's rostered about 52% of CBS leagues. He's having a fantastic August.
Yahoo's only like 30%. So if you're in a Yahoo league, go get Cam Schlittler. I mean, I do think there's some stuff that he still needs to work on. He doesn't really bury his breaking balls. And the shapes on his 4-seam and 2-seam are like pretty similar. And he needs to separate those out a little bit. And the 2-seam actually has a little bit more upside, but it's great velo. He's already struck out 25% of the big leaguers he's seen. He's sitting 98, even with a 407 Sierra. I think that's, and a possible home run issue. I think he's a really exciting player. I guess I think he's a little bit more exciting than Brass and Ashcraft. Yeah. He's a guy I'd pick up first.
I think Bryce Miller, if available, would be just ahead of Schlittler because of the home park, but Schlittler is more in that sort of tier for me. Maybe Schlittler is in the, would I actually drop Spencer Strider for him for the rest of the season? He's at least a consideration. My initial reaction is, no, I'm too loyal.
But he could, like, the Cam Schlittler is the type of player that could at least maybe do what a good Strider could do,
At least come close, at least match
nasty stuff.
Ks with maybe some ratios that get a little inflated because of the park and some tougher matchups that could be around the corner. The other names that we're looking at on the pitching side, a lot of 2-steps that you had circled in the rundown. So it's basically guys like JT Ginn, Shane Smith, Brandon Young versus the likes of Parker Messick, who looked pretty good in that debut, 6 2/3, 1-run ball, 6 Ks, 1 walk. I'm not at all surprised knowing that doesn't throw hard. The changeup's good. The command's good. Nothing has the movement profile that it's supposed to have. Like it all, if you look at that player movement, that pitch movement plot we look at on Savant all the time, the pitches are just outside those circles with the slashes going through them. They're just a little off. You can tell it's a little funky, and guys have a hard time with it.
Yeah, he was like a little bit more over the top than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
And the command was good. The command was good. He was placing a lot of 4-seamers like just right in the corners and some sinkers right down low in the corners. The changeup, was a little bit all over the place, but it is sort of designed to be that, like kind of a 2-strike changeup versus one that he wants to get a called strike on. So I was pretty impressed, man. I watched that debut and came away impressed. I think this is a rare thing where kind of the model and the prospecting and it all comes together a little bit. The only thing that doesn't speak well of him is it's not great velo, but you do have to remember that lefties are about a tick lower. So if he's got 93.3, it's not a 93.3 against righties average, which is around 94 plus. He's basically got average velo for a lefty. And if you want to break it down into components, I'd say average velo, above average stuff, above average command. That's you add all those together, like that's good. That's better than above average. That might be, really good.
And maybe in a lot of leagues, the best looking pitcher available by just results in the minors and start at home next week against Tampa Bay is a good matchup. So pitching deep into games on a team that's still competitive seems to have good enough command to be good and functional right away in the big leagues. A lot of boxes being ticked by Parker Messick. Of the Young, Smith, Ginn, anybody else out there, is there anyone that you kind of prioritize above the others, or are you just kind of stacking up guys for depth at this point for that part of your bids?
Well, Young in some places is a 2-starter, but in other places doesn't look like it. So I guess there's some concern that he may lose his rotation spot to Kyle Bradish next week.
Yeah, Bradish is possibly back Tuesday. I don't see it marked as confirmed yet. Bradish could get a 2-start week, his first start back. They said he was going to return during that series, last note I saw. He did not specify which day.
Sort of takes him off the board. Shane Smith gets the Royals at home and the Yankees at home. And then the one problem with Ginn is he gets the Tigers and the Rangers, which they're not the worst opponents, but he gets them both at home.
Yeah, I'm not messing with that. That seems just loaded with risk.
I mean, Hurston Waldrop better be off your waiver wires, but you got by now you've heard us talk about him. He's got to be gone. And otherwise there's not a lot of great 2-starters. Mike McGreevy is decent. The one thing I don't like is it's Pittsburgh first at home. I like that. At Cincinnati, it's still a little bit of a tummy ache inducing there. McGreevy has good command, can spin the ball, and has a good changeup, but it's not a great fastball, and I just worry he'll get hit up in that second one. But I guess, since we've kind of, I would rather have McGreevy, I think, than Shane Smith against the Yankees at home. Emmett Sheehan, if he's out there, looks like a 2-star. JP Sears gets at Seattle and at Minnesota. I still think I like McGreevy a little bit better. So it's not a great week for 2-starters off the wire. I'm not. Do you think Kyle Hendricks at Texas or at Houston? You like that at all?
No, I don't like that. Brad Lord's getting 2. I mean, he's been getting good
Brad
results.
Lord, the first one's at Yankees. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not throwing that out there unless I'm just in ratios are cooked mode, which again happens, and I am. I
suppose Oviedo at St. Louis, but then at Boston, and I don't really trust his command. So, out of all the guys we've talked about, I guess Michael McGreevy is my 2-start champion of next week.
All right. Well, if any other waiver questions come up on the pitching front, drop those in our Discord since we're a little earlier in the week than usual with this episode. Looking at some bullpens and
wait on the hitting.
I want to get to hitting. I'm doing bullpens next. Right. I flipped the order.
All right.
I was just thinking about bullpens though, because Felix Bautista, we learned, had surgery on his shoulder for his labrum and rotator cuff. I don't think he's coming back next year. They say 12 months to recover. I think it's 2027 before he's pitching in games again. There was already a question short term about what the Orioles are going to do to replace him. I think they've got a clear longer term question they have to answer in that bullpen right now.
But maybe they'll try to do both, Right now, I mean, they're moving around so much that you're like, this seems like an audition.
Right. Keegan Egan pitched in the 6th the other day, and he was getting some chances before. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, short term, I don't see anybody that I'm necessarily trusting as a viable source of saves, but I think it's a bullpen worth watching in the final 5 weeks to see if any true internal candidates for next year kind of separate themselves as interesting, or if they're going to have to go via trade or free agency to solve that bullpen problem.
Yeah, like Dietrich Enns, is the model, the produced one. He's 34 and he throws 93 and a half. So that's a little bit weird for me. Also the changeup is like his second best pitch. So he's like fastball, changeup, cutter, lefty who throws 93 and a half, but has the best stuff plus in the pen. Is that, 34. Like, I just don't think that is the solution, even though he's gotten saves and he's gotten holds. Corbin Martin is second in stuff plus, but he also has a bit of a fastball problem where, it's 95.8, but it's not great shape. So his best pitch is a curveball. And he does throw the curveball only 18% of the time. So there could be a version where he really ups that curveball percentage. He's 29. He would be under contract for next year because he's only got 2 years of service time. Is Corbin Martin your favorite? I thought it would be Cano, but he doesn't even have holds.
No.
And then Keegan Aiken is an interesting solution, but again, like he's a 30-year-old lefty who throws 93.5, and he's like a slightly more polished version of Enns, where it's a little bit old. It's not like you're going to throw a 93-mile-an-hour lefty as your closer next year. I don't know.
I don't think that's the long-term answer. Maybe that becomes a short-term answer for a few weeks, but I wouldn't expect Enns to enter next year as that guy.
Enns or Aiken.
No, it just doesn't
seem
look
like very similar guys in a way. So if there is somebody that could emerge from this, I guess I'd circle Corbin Martin. I don't know, man.
Sometimes there isn't an answer. Like sometimes it's just a situation to not get excited about. And I guess the same maybe
this is a team that's going to be good next year. So
well, they'll address it somehow. But I just think it's probably coming from outside the organization. Or from something we're not looking at right now anyway.
But it's not a team that's like spent a lot of money. So, they seem like very unlikely to spend a lot of money on a closer. Now, would they trade for one? I think that's even less likely. Like they're not going to put together like a Mason Miller type package. They're not run like that. So
I don't think they would trade for a Miller type, but I think they would trade for someone that they think could close that has better stuff than the options they have right now. Maybe someone that hasn't done it before.
Or maybe like Robert Suarez doesn't get the deal he wants and it's only like a 3-year 60 or something and they can handle that, or a 3-year 45 and they can handle that. Or maybe they signed Carlos Estevez, who nobody is that excited about, but he's just like their closer,
Orioles fans are not excited by this conversation so far. Has anybody, just a quick hitter, has anybody on the A's side emerged yet as an actual solution to replace Mason Miller, or is it still wide open there?
They're circling through guys. Sean Newcomb is interesting to me because I don't think he's fully stretched out or fully unstretched out.
He hasn't completely adapted to being in relief.
Yeah, I think there could be a couple more ticks in there in relief. And he's got a good curveball. I know there's the lefty problem, him being a lefty, but he's been given a chance. His Stuff Plus is not the best of the group. I mean, the Stuff Plus would say it's Tyler Ferguson or Justin Sterner. But in terms of what's happened, Sterner has just gotten holds, hasn't gotten a save chance yet. Tyler Ferguson's gotten a save chance. I would personally maybe circle Sterner.
All right, at least that's like short term.
I think, I don't know. It's really a tough one for me, and it's in a tough park too, so that's something to think about.
I wonder if their arrival of several big league starters, we've talked about Perkins and Luis Morales, Gage Jump's not far away. Maybe one of those guys becomes a closer.
Luis Morales, dude.
Morales going into next season, maybe they decide to go that route. Because, I think they show some role flexibility greater than other organizations with pitchers. They say, we tried you as a starter. We're going to switch it.
A full offseason, Bideau come back and he's throwing 96, 97, and he just kind of outstuffs his poor command.
He could be your new Jorge Lopez, like your guy that
I like all
comes
the way
all the way back around to a new role, and then it all falls into place. That's what happened with Lopez. So hey, we've seen it. We have seen it happen before. On our way out the door, let's get some bats. I mean, the Baltimore bats. You talked a lot about Sammy Basayo, Dylan Beavers. Like they've been big parts of the show all week. They're some of the best available hitters where available, understandably so. Where else are you looking for upgrades among hitters this week? Who else sort of catches your eye as you start getting ready for the weekend?
Outfield has been a problem point. You got 5 outfielders. It feels like you're always looking for a 5th outfielder. And I was just looking at Darren Lile's page, and it's decent. Like he doesn't walk that much, but he walked more in the minors. He doesn't chase. Like if you look at his chase rate and you look at his contact rate, you can look past some of his mediocre power rates because he also steals bases. So I don't know. This kind of looks like to me like a guy who won't ever be super exciting. He's but he has the chance to be like a league average player. And in the short term, his projections of like 250 average with 2 homers and 3 stolen bases, like, it gets worse than that. Promise you. And then you look at, like, he had 110 max EV in AAA and only had 175 so far in the majors. Like, maybe there's a little bit more power. If he can approach league average power, then this is a guy that in a full season next year might be a good 5th or 6th outfielder in drafting holds, where you think he's going to hit 250, play most of the year, and have, 15 homers and 20 steals.
I could see a little bit of the Maikel Garcia conversation from Thursday creeping in here, right? It's the low K rate, pretty good hard hit, not quite elite hard hit, but good.
He's not going to be a barrel god.
They're not sitting him all the time against lefties. He sits against some lefties. Maybe they don't want to spend. This is at least an audition for him. I think in 15-team leagues, Lile is pretty interesting. I think we've talked about Wenceel Pérez a few different times over the course of the year. I keep looking at his player page, waiting for the big dip to happen, and it's not really happening.
And he's been blessed by poor injury luck for Parker Meadows. I just wanted to throw him on there because I'm seeing him available, I think, more often than he should be. Because with Meadows out, he's pretty much an everyday player. And he does the same thing that I'm talking about with Lile. Like, this is sometimes, even on this show, or even I will be too obsessed with barrel or max EV or swing rates or hard hit rates or any of those things. He makes contact. He controls the zone. He plays good defense. He has power. He has speed. Does he have a lot of power? No. Does he have 30 stolen base speed? No. But he does everything. And I think that and he's a switch hitter. So, like, I think if you're a manager, you're like, yeah, he's going to be there probably. You know what I mean? Like, you have to give me a reason not to have him in there.
Yeah, no, I like him quite a bit. So I'm intrigued. I got him on auto-new for $1 earlier this year. He's probably going to be a keeper for me at the current rate, because I think he's a big part of the plan right now. The Tigers plays a ton in right. He's been playing extra because of injuries that they've piled up, as you said. Luke Keaschall, by the way, is interesting because he's out there still in some leagues.
Well, I wanted to set up a would you rather. Give me the names on the would you rather, because I had Luke Keaschall in there because I looked at some ownership rates, and I think Matt McClain was owned in more leagues than Luke Keaschall. And then I had a couple other, because second base is such a tough position. What were the other second basemen I threw on there?
I think you put on Luis Garcia.
Because he's sort of up and down. He's at that sort of, I think on, this is all sort of like 30% owned on Yahoo.
Yeah. And then you've got Bryson Stott on there too.
And I think what happens with like guys like Stott and McClain is that you drafted them and you are disappointed. Or you drafted them and you're like, it's sort of what I wanted. And, they are established names. Am I really going to drop them for this like flash in the pan, for Luke Keaschall? And I think my argument is that of all four of these guys, I want Luke Keaschall. And then second, I might want Luis Garcia. So if you're a Stott or McClain owner, am I making enough sense where I'm like, hey, Keaschall and Garcia make more contact than Stott and McClain. McClain is losing time right now. Keaschall has just as much speed, I think, as anybody else on this list. And Garcia has just as much power as anybody else on this list. So what is the argument for keeping McClain and Stott if Keaschall or Garcia are available? Am I getting this right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I like Keaschall better by a small margin. Like, it usually is a small margin, but I think there's a good balanced skill set there that's comparable to other players. I think there's a ceiling that's higher and a floor that's reasonably close. Yeah. So I don't think you're giving up too much floor to take the chance in this case. And of the four, like after it's three other than Keaschall. Of the three that aren't Keaschall, Matt McClain, I think, is a guy that I'm going to like going into next year at a discounted price, because I think this will be a non-rehab offseason. And maybe the playing time situation will be cloudy. I think there's a chance Matt McClain comes back and has a nice rebound in 2026 with a full run of health through the winter.
Analyzing also like plate appearances in the last week, I guess the toughest argument is Stott versus Garcia Jr. Stott is playing more and is a little bit on fire right now. And then Garcia Jr., I guess I just wanted to put him out there because let's say you have McClain and the only one that's available to you is Garcia Jr., I'd make that switch in a redraft.
Yeah. Yeah, I think playing time is critically important this time of year. Like, you just look at it and you're like, is there am I losing even lefty at bats? Because that could be the difference this time of year. Every single at bat could matter. So I think that's one thing with McClain. I did not notice that McClain's playing time had started to dip a little bit. So
yeah, so I guess if we're ranking these four for redrafts and for immediate need, it's Stott, Keaschall, Garcia, McClain. I think that's where I'm going to land.
I think that's where I'm at for short term. I think long term it would look a bit different. Like, I think Keaschall would come up first on that list, and I think I'd have a little more faith in
maybe McClain second.
Yeah, but I do like the way you've got him set up for the rest of this season. We do have Rhys Hoskins getting close to activation. You got a playing time question there because Andrew Vaughn has been really good. I think the crunch would probably be Yelich a little more in the outfield. They've already started doing that some. So you probably chip away at the playing time of a guy like Isaac Collins in the end if you're going to play Vaughn at first and DH Rhys Hoskins and play Yelich in the outfield.
When Yelich plays in the outfield, he plays left. So far, it's been Collins and right.
Mm-hmm. That's with Chourio on the IL too, but Chourio's starting a rehab assignment on Friday, so that's your other.
And they haven't been playing Chourio at center?
They haven't been. They were earlier in the year.
Oh, yeah. They played him at the end, right before he got IL'd. It was 4 straight games in center.
Yeah. So
your pro offense lineup is Chourio in center, Yelich in left, and Collins in right.
You play Frelick in right, probably, and Collins would still be on the bench.
Really?
Yeah. I think Collins becomes the 4th outfielder. Perkins becomes the 5th outfielder in this scenario.
And Hoskins is the DH.
Vaughn's the
no, actually, Vaughn is the DH. I think Hoskins' glove is better.
Well, they're the two guys, 2 spots, however you line them up. But that's the trickle-down effect. I think it runs down the roster to both Perkins and Collins.
And I think this team needs power enough that they might do this. Because I mean, I know they've been great, and I'm not trying to throw shade on them. I'm just saying, like, the Hoskins' power is a thing that's not easily replicable with any other player. So I think that is a dimension that they could add they would want to add, like especially over somebody like a Perkins. Perkins is like a lot of other Milwaukee players, like
great defender.
Yeah, great defender, pretty good plate skills, but he doesn't have that power. So if you can replace Blake Perkins basically with Rhys Hoskins and you're the Milwaukee Brewers, I think you do that. Rhys Hoskins is available a lot of places, and I don't think that a lot of people have him circled as like somebody they need to pick up this week. I think he will go on rehab, and there's a chance you pick him up a week and you have to sit him a whole week while he rehabs for a whole week. But then he's going to be a lot more expensive after that.
I do think I'm probably keeping him more to 15-team leagues, 14, 15-team leagues and deeper, though. I think the playing time will be fluid enough.
Take some days off.
Yeah,
they were doing that sometimes last year.
I don't think he's snapping back into shallow league usage coming off of this IL stint.
Especially since like even the projections are for like a 220 hitter with like 25 homer power.
Yeah. So plan accordingly, but they will have a little bit more of a logjam. Good problem to have. And more thump, certainly a good thing for that Brewers lineup with both Hoskins and Chourio on their way back. We need to go. We thought this episode might come up short. It didn't. It came in at a full hour. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this one together. You can find Eno on Blue Sky, Saris.bsky.social. I am DVR.bsky.social. You can find us in the Discord. You got any questions this weekend? I might be able to get to my phone a little bit. Maybe. Because I'm probably not getting out of the house all that much. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.